Good morning, everyone, and welcome to University Unitarian Church. It's Sunday, November 14th in Seattle, sunny Seattle, Washington. We started the winter storms early, didn't we, in October this year, and we'll get a lot of wind and wet, but that's what we do here. We specialize in this. My name is John Luopa. I'm one of the ministers here and happy to greet you this morning, those who are sitting with us here in the sanctuary and those who are with us on the live stream. A couple of announcements as we begin the service this morning. We remind you, of course, and you've been so faithful in remaining masked when you are in the building. You're all invited to coffee hour following the service this morning in Nathan Johnson Hall. And if you're brand new to us and would like to know more about this church community and Unitarian Universalism, we have information sessions after every service every week downstairs in the Dick's room. We have been fielding as well as feeling many of the frustrations of not being able to sing yet as a community. It is such an important part of our participation and enjoyment, really, of the service. But you will have an opportunity tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. The intergenerational choir will be rehearsing under the chapel portico, and you are invited to join them if you want to come and sing. You just need to bring a mask, and there are special singing masks too if you're ready to go up to that next level. But that is a way for you to help deal with some of that frustration. Since we started meeting here in the chapel, one of the practices we've refrained from this time is the passing of the plate on Sunday morning, due initially to fears that the COVID was spread by touch. But that has been pretty much disproved at this point. So beginning on the Sunday following Thanksgiving, we will be passing the plate during the service. And of course, if you wish not to touch it, you don't need to. But hopefully someone next to you will to keep it moving back and forth. We think surprises are good rarely, so that's why we're telling you this many weeks in advance. Delighted to welcome our guests this morning, Walter Washington from Lake City Partners Ending Homelessness. We're going to hear from him. And of course, welcoming John Carrington back on harp, special music. Let us begin the service then, friends, with our prelude. We are a community of memory and hope, and it is my sad duty to report the death of two members of this community earlier in the week. Professor Joseph Vance, University of Washington, and Frank DeMarco. Dr. Vance's service will be held on Sunday, December the 5th at 2 o'clock. And arrangements for Frank's memorial service will be sometime on Saturday, December the 11th. So we invite you to watch the Gateway and the e-news for details about both of those. May their memory be a blessing unto all. Let us enter into the fellowship of heart and mind and spirit this morning. And may our hearts be opened with sensitivity to the joys and sorrows, the hopes and burdens of those who sit beside us. And may our minds be enlarged to understand the many languages we speak as we struggle to give voice to the wisdom that resides within each of us. May our spirits be attuned to the deepest chords of reality as we seek to center ourselves in communion with the mystery of being. As we open ourselves in this hour of worship, may our souls find peace, and may the blessings of love be present with us in our togetherness. I invite you to stand as you are able as we hear the doxology and our opening hymn, number 89.
On the second Sunday of each month, we share our offering plate with an organization in the community doing wonderful work. And on this morning, we'll be sharing our plate with Lake City Partners Ending Homelessness. And it's my pleasure to invite their new executive director, Walter Washington, to come share with you a little bit more about some of the really exciting things happening for Lake City Partners. Yeah, you can take it off.
Good morning. I was really enjoying the harp. I was thinking about how soothing the sound was and how reckless my 4-year-old was this morning. And if anything can tame my 4-year-old, it'll probably be that wonderful selection. So I really appreciate that. So as I mentioned, I've been in my new post for about 4 months. This is the first time I've got a chance to speak in person to an audience this large, so I really appreciate that. And thank you for your care and consideration. I've gotten a lot of downloads about your support in the past with the work we've been doing over the last 20 years, primarily based out of Lake City. But as some of you may know, we've grown our work so much that we're not just in Lake City, we're across North King County. One of our staple programs is God's Little Anchor, which is a day program in Lake City. It's got health, hygiene, and triage services. It's wonderful. 9 to 5, we have folks who are experiencing homelessness come inside. They can cook, get the health and hygiene services taken care of, and have a sense of community. Back in April, we started our 24-hour program. We're calling it a 24-hour enhanced program in Shoreline. 62 individuals are staying there and have access to case management, health and hygiene services, but the real magic is really the love and sincerity that they get from our staff who are there on site. It's great that we can bring people indoors, but the magic of the program is having access to true professionals who can guide them to housing solutions. What we're focusing on right now is not just our current work, but the future of this work. And I think that there's never been a more distinct call for us to be our most innovative and thoughtful in how we carry out our work. Certainly we have some restrictions, right? We have one program in Lake City that does day programming. Then we have the 24-hour program in Shoreline. But how do we extend our work outside the walls of Shoreline or Lake City buildings? We feel like it's through community-based case management. We all walk past folks in our areas who are experiencing homelessness, and they're alone. Right? Shelter systems are broken. They're full. For example, our 24-hour program, we always have 62 participants, and our wait list is about 75 to 100. Right? So consider just our wait list, 75 individuals out there in the cold, in the wet, they're hungry. They need case management, care, and attention. Through this idea around diversion funds, what we can do is interface with these individuals who are on our wait list, who are in the streets, and get them ready for housing even before they move into the Oaks 24-hour program. For some percentage of those individuals, they won't need our program because they've gotten really effective case management, and they can get housing right away. For others, they'll be more prepared when they move into the Oaks. So that way, some folks who might have been there for 7, 8 months, they'll be there just for 2 or 3 months as we connect them with keys into households. And through this diversion fund, what we'll also be able to do is be more considerate and more careful about where we place folks at. It's one thing to give somebody keys and say you're on your own, but what we're trying to do is connect them to areas that they're familiar with and to give them ongoing support. Maybe they're involved in the church, maybe they reconnected with families. We can serve them in the community through these diversion funds. without them even taking one step inside one of our programs through our community-based case management team. We have a current goal to match United Way of King County. More recently, just 2 weeks ago, we awarded $60,000 from United Way of King County for this diversion fund that we use, but we also leverage our partners. So our partners, whether it's a YMCA, a DSC, you name it, could call us up and say, hey, we know you have these diversion funds. We have participants who are ready to move in. And we can say, great. It takes you 24 hours. Let's get the landlord's name, and let's get this person moved in with some modicum of support going forward through that agency. We're looking for a $60,000 match for that particular fund, and we feel like between now and the end of quarter one, we can move in 50 individuals into their own units. I know, and a lot of us know what it feels like to be home during the holidays. It feels good, right? A lot of the folks we work with have went multiple holidays without seeing family, without really feeling like they're seen by anyone, without a sense of community. We're hoping we can start administering these funds right away in quarter four of 2021, moving into 2022. That way, a lot of these folks can be home during the holidays and feel a sense of love and community. We will be out after the service in the area there with some information, and I'd love to answer any questions you might have and talk about innovation in this sector. I think this is the issue of my lifetime, homelessness and housing stability. So I super appreciate just any questions you have, ways to engage, volunteer hours you might be willing to leverage, and I'm here. Thank you for your support. I'm looking forward to having more conversations and being plugged into this community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing about some of the really exciting things that are emerging from the what really truly is a partnership between so many different organizations and communities to support our neighbors experiencing homelessness. And it has been so meaningful to be one partner among many in Lake City Partners Ending Homelessness. Would you please join me now in saying the words we say each week at our offering? This church is a community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. When we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm our lives within it.
I invite you now to join me in a spirit of prayer and meditation as we take a moment to quiet and center ourselves, seeking that which renews us as a people and as persons. May we grow in gratitude for this mysterious gift of life, for all its songs and skirmishes, its love-making, its haste-stopping beauty, its tender mercies, its honest dialogues, its stitching together acts of compassion, small celebrations, broad visions, its simple tastes of bread, costly friendships, for the turn of words to unlock minds and move hearts, for kindnesses and chuckles, and for the forthrightness of children who enlarge our sense of what is possible for us all. We ask that our caring become wise, our support honest, our concerns thoughtful, our loves as well as our fears accurate, and our spirits so open to suggestion that we will become faithfully daring, expectantly patient, responsibly hopeful, with each other, with ourselves, and with that or whom births, nurtures, and sustains us, all the days of our lives. To these imperfect words, we add the silent intentions of our hearts. So may it be. Amen.
I invite you to remain seated for this next hymn, hymn number 352, Find a Stillness. So before I begin, I'd like to extend a special invitation to service next week. It will be featuring youth and young adults in our congregation talking about the eighth principle and the role of anti-racism in religion. So around this time of year, a cartoon surfaces that speaks to my own experience. It features a woman in the first panel, and she's standing at a dark window, and she exclaims with increasing exasperation, "It's pitch dark out. What time is it? Is it midnight? It feels like midnight." To which her friend responds, it's 5:27 p.m. So welcome to the end of daylight savings in the Pacific Northwest, my friends. This is your reminder to start taking your vitamin D, if you have not done so already. Time and what humans have done with it is a peculiar thing. We are obsessed with it. The word time, I learned, is actually the most commonly used noun in English. One can use time, buy time, waste time, find time, kill time. Time can fly by, escape, or stand still. Time can be ripe. Time can be money. Or one can have the time of their life or even their 15 minutes of fame. I know that I am not alone in longing for more time, this kind of effusive thing, or at the very least, a break from the tyranny of time in which that ticking clock can feel relentless. I long for time away from time, and increasingly I find myself longing for Sabbath. Both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian scriptures were very concerned with keeping the Sabbath by creating one full day a week to rest from both commerce and from labor, allowing space and time so people might receive the day rather than use it or be used by it, and to turn their attention instead towards worship and towards reverence. In the King James Version of the Bible, the word Sabbath and its cognates are mentioned 172 times. In contrast, money and the forgiving of debt is mentioned 140 times. Homosexuality was mentioned maybe 7. Depending on how far one is willing to stretch their interpretations. So Sabbath, it's important. In the book of Exodus, when the 10 Commandments are first revealed, the 4th commandment is to remember the Sabbath day and to keep it holy. And this is the point in time that I want to travel back to on this morning, because stories and memory have a certain power to collapse time. The book of Exodus is an epic telling of the Israelites' escape from slavery in Egypt. The Israelites leaving Egypt, they followed the prophet Moses into the wilderness in hopes of reaching a new promised land. The people were running from the world of Pharaoh, the world of enslavement and overwork and persecution, and they had little idea what they were running toward. We find them in the desert, getting restless and reacting to the many unknowns that surrounded them. They were scarcely a community. What they shared was the experience of trauma and daily survival. It was all that they knew. And there was no map of where they were going, and food and water were unpredictable. It is challenging to sit in uncertainty, to be in that ambiguous in-between place of what was and what will be. And we've all had a good taste of that in these past months and years. We've watched the world as it once was come to an end. All the while, the future still feels like it's gestating. And no one truly knows when we might expect a birth. And on some days, it can just feel like we're living in the contractions. In the book of Exodus, Moses is triangulated again and again between the people and the God who heard their cries and led them out of Egypt. In one passage, the people are telling Moses that at least in Egypt, they knew where their next meal was coming from. In response, God sends forth manna, something like a sweet bread to rain down from the sky, but only enough manna to eat each day, for hoarding manna was not an option, nor was having more than your neighbor, except for on the sixth day, when enough manna was provided for 2 days, so the people could rest worry-free on that seventh day. And as the story goes, they subsisted on this manna for the entire 40 years they were wandering the desert. But despite these provisions, the people fretted and they questioned Moses, and they thought of returning to Egypt. In an unusually act of very direct communication, God speaks to the people from the mountain of Sinai. Coming down in a mighty cloud, the people hear the statements that become the 10 Commandments, decrees that define both how to be in relationship with their God and with their neighbor. As a community and as a religion, they were emerging in that wilderness. And I wonder what it meant. I wonder what it meant to these formerly enslaved people that the requirement to rest was included in the commandments. And notably, the commandment to rest is not only for the faithful, but also for the servants, the oxen, and even for the fields where they plant. In Egypt, their worth had been defined by their labor. Their lives were a daily grind of producing bricks that built the pyramids, these massive structures that symbolize the enormous power and wealth of both the pharaohs and their gods. And so what did it mean? What does it mean to require rest as a primary way that one worships? Old Testament scholar Walter Brueggemann writes, "The Sabbath rest of God is the acknowledgement that God's and God's people in the world are not commodities to be dispatched for endless production and the service of a command economy. Rather, they are subjects in an economy of neighborliness, an economy of people and covenant with one another." He goes on, "In our own contemporary context of the rat race of anxiety, the celebration of the Sabbath is an act of both resistance and alternative. It is resistance because it is a visible insistence that our lives are not defined by the production and consumption of commodity goods. But the Sabbath is not only resistance, it is alternative." And so when was the last time that you really rested and experienced a reprieve from the cultures of consumerism and capitalism? Not checking your email, not multitasking, not letting your thoughts agitate on what has been left undone, and not purchasing or coveting goods and services, but instead paused and let your racing mind, your tired body, and your anxious soul rest, so that you may turn toward what is more beautiful, true, and eternal in life. When was the last time you received time as a gift and refocused your attention on all the graces that are freely given, noticing the manna that falls from the sky in its many forms and sustains your life without having to earn it? Honestly, outside of the days I go backpacking each summer, in which these activities are no longer available to me, I cannot tell you when I last had such a day. I long for Sabbath. Now, despite having roots that go back deep in the biblical traditions, Unitarian Universalism does not have much of a relationship with the Ten Commandments. There's even a joke I've heard that UUs refer to the Ten Commandments as the 10 suggestions. So commandments, they just aren't part of our culture which puts emphasis on self-determination and individual freedom. But I do wonder about the spiritual, social, and physical cost of severing our relationship with the Sabbath and with divine rest. 2 weeks before the whole world went into standstill at the beginning of the pandemic, I preached a sermon from this pulpit entitled "The Urgency of Slowing Down." It was not lost on me, the irony. And so for many people at that time, there was this forced slowing down during the various lockdowns. And for others, essential workers, parents, healthcare workers, teachers, people already living on the margins. Life took on a totally different nature, and many found that what was barely manageable before now felt near impossible. Much could be said about the past 2 years, but one thing is for sure, it has been revealing. The nature of work itself is being called into question, as the pandemic clarified what people both need and deserve to thrive. Many have decided to push for better pay, better working conditions, or to leave their field entirely. I am so inspired seeing the organizing happening right now. People are pushing back against the culture of Pharaoh, the culture that defines people's worth based on their productivity, the culture that has treated workers and people as expendable, particularly those who work in the lowest paying jobs. It was Ralph Waldo Emerson that said, "A person will worship something." Have no doubt about that. That which dominates our imaginations and our thoughts will determine our lives and our character. Therefore, it behooves us to be careful what we worship. For what we are worshiping, we become. If there is any national religion of this country, I would argue that it is capitalism and consumerism. It defines our days, our hopes, our fears. And this worship has made many of our relationships to one another, to our neighbors, transactional and competitive rather than covenantal. And furthermore, it has broken our relationship with our home, the earth no longer seen as source, but as resource to be objectified. And so I wonder, seeing these shifts, these surprise shifts, I wonder, has the pandemic seeded new ideas that challenge this worship? And I wonder if people's inner and external lives were disrupted enough, slowed down enough, that some of these seeds have taken root and may bring new life to these questions of work, rest, and people's inherent worth. Here at UUC, life did slow down some during the pandemic. We adapted to doing church online, and then online and in person. We started new programs and found a strange new rhythm. And as a staff, as your ministers, we prayed that we were doing enough while trying to accept that there were needs that exceeded our capacity to meet them. For the 5.5 years I have been with you as one of your ministers, it's been that long, there has been this pace of working and doing church that has felt frenetic at times. I arrived right before the 2016 election, and in the midst of a giant building campaign. And so there has been this urgency in my years with you, and at times an anxiety that has been palpable in the church and in the groups. And as your minister of social justice arriving at this time, I will admit to feeding into this urgency, even as I felt myself depleted by it. We are alive in a time of enormous change and shift. To return to the people of Exodus, we have been traversing the wilderness of the unknown. And often our religious response to this reality has been to get busier and busier. Over the past years, impactful new programs and important partnerships have started. Vital questions about race, equity, and power have been explored, and we've built a beautiful and accessible home for liberal religion that will be here for generations to come. But I do wonder at this pace that we've gone. I do wonder what might have been fractured in the process, what might need tending, and who might be feeling kind of crispy at the end of it all. Who among us might be needing permission and support to rest and to renew? If you are feeling crispy, here is your permission to rest and renew. In the long haul work of justice and in the ever-changing nature of religion, the question for me remains, what will sustain us as persons and as a people? As we increasingly return to our shared life as a community, while acknowledging that we are still in the wilderness in many ways, I believe that we are now in a unique position to explore these questions. What will sustain us? And I believe that how we answer them might carry us closer to the promised land, or at least it will make wandering this desert more joyful, more connected, and more liberatory. The destination remains important, but maybe more so is how we travel together. It is not coincidence, nor was it bad navigation that kept the people wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. They would not arrive until they were a transformed people, until the promised land was something they had fostered within them and between them. In the words of the poet Antonio Machado, "Wanderer, there is no road. The road is made by walking." The practice of Sabbath is to resist. Sabbath is resistance. But more than that, it is to remember. To remember who you are, outside of the definitions of work, task, and role. To remember that you are a person of inherent worth and dignity, a carrier of the divine spark and loved beyond measure. It is to remember who one another is, outside of the transactional nature. To remember that we are fellow people on this journey, reliant on one another's, that each person you meet is a fellow carrier of that divine spark, that light of love. It is to remember whose you are. Child of the universe, born of stardust on a living planet, children of a liberatory and loving God. And to pause and give loving attention to your life and to life itself. To turn your face to worship, whatever it is that you understand to be sacred. Sabbath invites us to pause and to receive time as the gift it is. We never know how long we will be here, and we don't know how long we will have one another.
And so receive this day and be glad. Amen. Would you please join now in singing hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Lives. Not singing. Oh, at least once a month I'll do that until we truly are singing together. Would you please stand and be part of a congregation feeling this music?
On this Sabbath day, I send you forward with these words from the Reverend Dr. Vivian Pomeroy. Let us take much of love into the struggles of life. And when the recall sounds and the shadows fall, may we have hearts unembittered by all we have suffered and uncorrupted by all we have enjoyed. And be at last remembered as one who loved greatly. Go in peace. Go in love, my friends.